Okay, welcome back to T2's Book Club. Today I'm going to be doing a couple of book reviews. The first one is called Skin Game, Jim Butcher. I read this one a couple weeks ago now, I guess. And like the Cold Days review, this one, it didn't really set the stakes up as high as the first game. It's more, or the first book. This one is more about setting things up for the next story, I think, because I mean they did do some pretty high stakes stuff. This one's about, he's like the Winter Knight for the Queen of the Winter, and she makes a deal. She owes somebody a debt. In order to pay back that debt, she has to help this one guy named Nicodemus Archleon break into this vault, which is in the underworld where Hades lives. It's Hades' vault, or he's not really Satan. He's like the Greek god of the underworld. So he has he's a collector. He's kind of like Smaug, the dragon from the Lord of the Rings, but it's like on a next level Smaug. They say he has like all these religious relics and stuff, and diamonds that just flows like a river, and all kinds of piles of gold, and like artworks from like the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and stuff, like Da Vinci and all kinds of like famous paintings and stuff that have gone missing. It's like this guy's collecting it. So not only do they have to break into this vault, it has like these three gates that you need like a fire wizard and an ice wizard, and somebody has to die for the third gate to get into that vault. You have to get into the Never Never, which is like this fairy land, alternate reality version or plane. In order to get there, you have to be in a place that is linked to it on Earth, which is similar. So on Earth, it's like this guy Johnny Marconi's vault. Is that his name, Johnny Marconi? Gentleman Johnny Marconi. I think that's his name. So, like, just to get into that vault, they had to have, like, this whole crew, and one of them is, like, a necromancer. He summons, like, a bunch of dudes, and they keep them busy with Uzis and stuff while they're breaking into this vault, just to get into the Hades vault. So it's pretty cool. It's like a romp. It's like a, Heat, or one of those kind of, mafia kind of movies, but it's like, breaking into a vault twice, and then... Hush! Look at this dog. Calm down back there. I'm doing a video. So, I remember in the last book I was talking about how... Did I talk about the Wild Hunt? Because I've seen this in a few other things now. This other book, I think, mentioned the Wild Hunt. And I don't know if I Google it, it tells you what that is. I'm looking up some other words, like Demesna. It was a new word I found out, which means like land attached to a manor. Wild Hunt. Related to fairies. Folklore motif that historically recurs in European folklore involves a ghostly or supernatural group of hunters passing in wild pursuit. Oh man, there's a photo of it. I can't show that. There's some tits in it, but yeah. So imagine like a bunch of like ghost hunters that just like trample over the world. They're pretty much unstoppable, and they just hunt things until they're dead. So in the Cold Days book, I didn't mention that one of the hunters was like, they tell you that it's Santa Claus. So you don't think about Santa Claus being like a fairy, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it. And they talk about like he had to do this thing with time dilation to slow down time, and they talked about they call him Kringle because that's his name. That's his like fairy name. And it's like, that's your expertise, right? And because that would make sense, because he has to like deliver presents all in one night, so that's how we like do time dilation and stuff. I think there's a guy named Vadarung that was like some kind of famous Norseman or Viking or something. And then there was the three Billy Goats Gruff were referenced in one of the previous book. Like Gruff is kind of like a goat man demon like you would see in Diablo 3 or something. So he actually uses Kringle in this book for something. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, I don't remember. But there's always like big references like that. And this book has that too. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But this book is about like the Knights of the Cross. I don't know if I mentioned those before. I think I did. There's like these three swords, and they're made out of the three nails that nailed Jesus to the cross. And there's like the sword of faith and the sword of something else. Fidelacius, Amaracius, and the other one I can't remember its name because it's like still in use by the current Knight of the Cross. There's only one Knight of the Cross currently in the books, except at the end of this book they create another one. So like the one guy is retired. That's Michael. And he has like this house that has been guarded by this whole platoon of angels because he was like such a badass Knight of the Cross. He has like he's like the really, they call him the good man, or he a good man, and he has like the most faith and stuff. And wields the sword Amarachius, which is pretty much Excalibur. I think it's the same sword as Excalibur, only it's called Amarachius or something. So the Fidelitas, or Fidelacius, I'm thinking of the guy from Path of Exile. That was the one he gave his friend the cop to hold on to. And she does something where her faith is kind of like, it wanes and it breaks the sword in a million pieces and it ruins it. So then at the end of this story, there's a guy who's just like the doctor, nerdy kind of guy that kind of helps him along. He ends up like catching the sword that's broken by the handle, and his faith restores it. And since he's like a nerd, he turns it into like a lightsaber because there's no metal, and it just like a beam of light comes out of it, and it's pretty much like a lightsaber. So he's like a new Knight of the Cross with a lightsaber now. I mean, this game, it's like kind of immature-ish, like stuff like a kid would think of, but it's awesome in the same way if you like that kind of stuff. But the main people they fight in this are the knights. There's something of the blackened denarius. So the blackened denarius is like a coin, a silver coin used in Rome, and it's the 30 pieces of silver that gave Judas Iscariot. That's why these demons inhabit each one of these coins. So there's like 30 demons, and something about these coins, you can't really keep them locked up or buried where nobody can get to them because they find a way to stay in circulation. Like the church was supposed to be like keeping some of them in a vault or something, and they always like get loose somehow. And there's like something weird about these coins, and they can't really, like, they're one of the biggest enemies in this thing. And then there's also these things I mentioned called the Nagloshi. So those are like really badass shapeshifters, and they're almost as bad as the things that are like otherworlders that are trying to get into the reality and ruin reality. Kind of reminds you of like Dark Tower shit from Stephen King if you think about it. It's like fucking reality itself is being attacked. But one of the crew on his like breaking into this vault in this book is a guy who's a really good shapeshifter, and then he realizes at the end that he's one of those like Nagloshis, or half Nagloshi, that his parents were Nagloshi and he didn't really agree with whatever they were doing. And it's like he was like such a good shapeshifter that they needed a retinal scan, and he could like shapeshift his own retinas or whatever, and like DNA and everything to perfectly simulate whoever he's trying to become. So there's like a lot of good shit in this book. The thing from the last book about he had like a worm in his head that was going to kill him when it got out and exploded his brain, that turned out to be like, previously he had one of these blackened denarius coins called Laciel. The demon Laciel was inhabiting it. And when she was in his head, because he held onto the coin for so long or something, and he was resisting it as a wizard or whatever, somehow it made a spirit in his brain. It was kind of like he was pregnant. So then at the end of the book, remember he has this guy Bob, who's like the spirit inhabits his skull. There's also a TV show based on these books, and he has like an actor that plays this guy, but he's always just like these orange lights that are inside this skull. And he can get loose as long as he's got a place to return to, and he can do like pretty much crazy magic, and he knows everything. So he finally birthed this spirit out of his brain, and it's like this, I think it was green lights. Look at he made a second skull for Bob to go to in case the first one was destroyed because people knew about it or something. But he ended up using that vessel for his baby spirit from this demon. So that's pretty cool. So it's kind of like setting up a lot of stuff for the next book. You got like a new Knight of the Cross. He's got this relationship with his the friend, the cop. He kind of like fucked her finally. They've been wanting to fuck for a while. I guess they finally got around to it. And then like his friend Molly, that's the good man Michael's daughter, that he accidentally made her into the Queen of, or not the Queen of Winter, but Lady of Winter. So she's like a fairy that's turning evil, but she's kind of resisting it. So like he's afraid to tell her dad that, and he doesn't know yet. So it's kind of setting a whole bunch of stuff up for the next book. It's going to be really awesome, I think. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, that's Skin Game. That's a pretty good book. I recommend. If you haven't read any of the Jim Butcher books, get the first one. Stormfront, I think it was called. And get started on it, because those are pretty badass. I'm pretty much thinking now that fairies are going to be like the next big thing in like science fiction fantasy because like vampires are totally played out and werewolves are kind of played out, and there's just a lot of places you can go with fairies. I mean, you don't really think about them being like the one from Zelda, the little tiny ones with wings, or like the what you call it, the Disney one. There's so many types of fairies. You got your goat men, you got your Viking god kind of things. You got like the red cap guy and brownie kind of pixies that are kind of like they're super fast and agile and you can't really fuck with them. But they're all like really weak against iron. Yeah, anything iron will fuck with them. So, like True Blood, they actually got into some fairy stuff halfway through that, or towards the end of that. So, yeah, that's my review of Skin Game.